Yes, Twaniza Nyonyo program ya Fair Breakfast in Africa as usual, and your host Jingo Kalule. This time round, Nina Omuntu Gwembaletede Irana Yenga Akolagana ku bintu bya culture, because you know TV Africa, you have the right to know when you're watching TV Africa. So we make sure you get to know about yourself, your culture. You know, you have to know yourself. Well, you don't have to know someone else without knowing yourself. So you have to know yourself on TV Africa. Here we have the professor, doctor, I don't know. She'll have to tell you. Yes, our host today is Jingo Kalule, and we have here, Madam, you're welcome.
Thank you very much,
Yes,
Jingo.
names?
Emily Drani.
Emily Drani.
Emily Drani.
From North?
Yes, my father is from Germany, and my mother is from Nigeria, but I'm from the north.
And operating in Kampala.
Yes. I'm a Ugandan.
You're Ugandan actually. You're an African, I understand. Evelyn, Emily Drani, you are working with culture and you're working upon youth, and you're trying to boost the culture, I know, in Uganda and around Africa.
Yes.
What structures have you laid to try to boost culture?
Okay.
And why culture? Because there are many things that people would run for, try to get people jobs, try to take people in the diaspora to work, you know, Abu Dhabi, try to create for youth jobs. But for you, you're focusing on culture. Why culture? Which is not even beneficial, because in Uganda, here, you have to run for something that, hey.
Yes. Okay, thank you for that question. Why culture? Because culture is what defines us as people.
Yes.
And however many jobs you do outside this country, your culture will always remain an important part of you. It cannot be copied from anywhere else.
Yeah.
And if you don't invest in your culture, what you're learning from other countries is other people's culture. And that means you go with an emptiness. You know, you're not on the table as an equal, because you're just going to imitate, you're going to copy, but you don't come with something. So for us, it's very important that our youth learn to appreciate their own culture. They feel proud of who they are. But then there's a process of learning, because it's not automatic that you just be born and you know your culture. There's a process of learning. And as an organization, we found that that's a cross-cultural foundation in Uganda. We found that culture has been relegated very much as something that is negative, it's primitive, and the youth today have not had an opportunity to see the beauty of our culture, because the education system doesn't include culture as something that is useful. And we have a few religions also that demonize culture. They say culture is satanic, culture is negative. If you're not Christian, I'm a Catholic, but if you're not Christian, in the past you'd be told you're a pagan. So there was no recognition of African religion, which is, as good as any other religion. It's just that it's not maybe codified. So as an organization, we said it's important that we get the youth to start thinking about culture as something that is useful. It's a source of innovation. If you want to, in the creative arts, if you want to look for new ideas, the best place to go is your culture, because it has so many things that the people in the West haven't touched. So why go and copy from the West when you have a resource?
When you have your resource here.
Yeah.
Yes. Are you not only operating in Kampala?
No, the Cross Cultural Foundation is a small organization. Our main office is in Kampala. It is behind Ham Towers in Makerere area. But we have partners all over Uganda. And the reason why we are doing this is because we find that there are many organizations that are doing good work. Many NGOs are doing good work. The government is also doing a lot of good work. But most of the time, culture is not a very strong part of their work. So our job is to be a catalyst. So if we find that we can work with a partner on the ground, and for instance, if there's an organization, let's say in Kasese, that is looking at issues of conflict resolution and peace, we come in with an angle of culture and say, how can we contribute to intercultural dialogue, where the different communities have not agreed on peaceful coexistence? How can we contribute to that? And we also have clubs, actually. We have heritage clubs across the country.
Really, yeah.
So that's what actually makes CCFU very wide,
Okay.
because most of our clubs are in secondary schools. And those are across Uganda.
That's beautiful. How have you managed the part of religion and culture? Because people look at religion very different from culture, you know, and there's a big gap that when they look at you as in you're talking about culture, they look at you as satanic.
Yes.
And some people may even ignore you somehow. How have you managed this? How have people perceived you?
Well, to start with, there's actually not very much difference between African traditional religion and other religions.
Yes.
One, in terms of principle, there is no religion that says it's good to kill, to steal, to commit adultery.
Yes.
Those are the 10 Commandments.
Yes.
In our African traditional religion, those are the same principles that apply. At the same time, in African traditional religion, you find that there is sacrifice, there is offerings, there's prayer, there's worship. All those things are found in the conventional religions. So that's the starting point. Not to say that they are very different, they're not.
They're not different.
In principle, they're not different.
Okay.
But however, in the way they deliver and the way they perceive God and
Yes.
the different gods, of course, for the different religions, that is where the difference comes in. But you cannot make that as a reason why you'd think that African religion is inferior or it is negative. However, at the time of the introduction of especially Christianity, there was a lot of emphasis on either you're Christian or you're pagan.
Yes.
So our African religions were relegated to the group of pagans, and because the religious institutions were also responsible for education, again, religion, left out culture. So many of the people who've gone through formal education have not, and who have been convertees, who have become either Protestant, Catholic, or any of the other religions, have a fairly negative attitude towards culture, unless it is to do with food, maybe dress is okay.
Why are they negative on culture?
Especially the beliefs. That is where there's a conflict, because I think there's a competition for souls.
Because you said the laws are like the same.
The principles are the same, but the manner of delivery and the approach towards worship is different. And some religions are very inclusive, and we can coexist. The Baha'i, for instance, are very inclusive, different. They pick from different religions, and they respect different religions. However, there are other religions that are very exclusive. So you have to be that particular religion.
So the religion does not respect culture.
And they don't respect the fact that there is another belief system that is not the same. And I think it's important to have respect for diversity.
What are the principles of that belief system?
Which one?
The belief system that
the traditional one?
Yes.
Yeah, in African traditions, family is very important, community is very important. There's respect for truth. Most of our cultures, you will find their oaths. If you tell lies, that is something that is unacceptable. You do not covet. You don't take your neighbor's wife. That is unacceptable in terms of adultery. In many of those religions, you will not have theft as something that is acceptable. Laziness is not acceptable. They have all sorts of principles, and those are very positive, and they actually correspond with Christianity and Christian, principles which are found in.
What is your role in the CCF?
My role in CCFU, I'm the executive director.
Yes.
And my role is to provide strategic direction.
Yes.
But also to test the environment and see whether we're relevant. We need to be able to give to our society in Uganda the alternative knowledge that helps our communities to see culture as something useful.
Yes. As the executive director, do you believe in religion?
Yes, I do. I'm a Catholic.
You're Catholic?
Yes.
How do you manage both? Because when I look at culture and religion, I really feel like they're different.
Okay. Well, one of the ways you can look at culture and religion is that when you say religion, are you speaking about Christianity?
Yes, I'm talking about Christianity.
So where does Christianity come from?
From culture.
No, it comes from the culture of the Romans. It comes from the culture of the Jews.
Their culture.
Yes.
Yes.
So we are borrowing from their culture.
Culture.
And the aspect we are borrowing is only the spiritual aspect or the religious aspect. They have other aspects of their culture which we don't take on. As Africans, we have only borrowed that part. So we also need to recognize that in our own culture, we also have the spiritual dimension. Yes? So what happens normally is there's a conflict when you're borrowing from another tradition which has its own worldview of how things should be done, and you're importing that into our worldview, our traditions, and it's not necessarily something that is in contradiction with what our cultures say, but because it's from another culture, there's an imposition of how that culture sees the world. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yes.
You understand?
Yes.
So if you say, for instance, we're borrowing from the Jews there, or the Romans, or whoever it is that we want to say is the originator of Christianity, you must realize that it is in their interest that we are converted.
Yes.
But then we also have to deal with our traditional religions. I was brought up as a Catholic. However, I was fortunate enough that in my family there has not been a disregard for culture. Culture has never been seen as something.
So we are trying to borrow from their culture
We are borrowing from another culture. All the
instead of
religions-
boosting our culture.
Yes, and if you want to borrow, there's no problem. The only thing is we should take the responsibility of saying, I have a multi-identity. I can be a Christian, I can be, my name is Drania, that means something in my culture.
Yes.
I'm a Madi.
Then you borrowed the other name.
Yes, and I can borrow Emily, but the fact is I'm Drani at the end of the day. And that means that I come from Uganda. I come from a part of Uganda that has traditions.
Because for them, they have not
Yes,
borrowed
so
ours.
yes.
They have not.
So why should I drop everything because I am a Catholic? I would not. So you have to create that balance between the fact that your identity has different faces and it is in one person. So you create that harmony as an individual. And when you go out into the world, you'll be able to say, yes, what you're saying makes sense to me.
Don't you
or
think,
not?
according to your post as executive director,
Yes.
that you would stick on boosting this other part than borrowing, like having as Drani this, like dropping a lot of their stuff.
The English part?
Yeah.
It's very difficult because that is how I was brought up. It is very difficult, and I understand, especially for the youth, it's also going to be very difficult to tell them, why aren't you called Namukasa Mugenyi?
Mugenyi, yes.
Without an English name,
yes.
without a Christian name. And some religions actually don't allow you to have, like for instance, we are hearing in the West, they are being asked to drop the Mpako. And that is an identity issue because you have an Mpako because you're part of a community. It places you in terms of social relations within that community. So I would find it very difficult unless someone voluntarily says, I no longer want to be identified completely in my culture alone, which is difficult because the education is different and the education actually nurtures the kind of person you are. And for me, even to be speaking here means that I have been a recipient of some form of education.
Yes.
And so that is part of my identity. I can't, divorce myself from it. But now what I need to do is to use that education to understand my culture
Has
better.
Christianity affected your preaching of the gospel of culture?
Yes and no.
Yes and no?
Yes. Because I have beliefs in Christianity and in the principles that are projected by Christianity. I believe in them. I'm a Catholic, and I enjoy being a Catholic. I have no problem with that.
You have no problem with that?
But at the same time, I see a lot of value in culture. It has so much value in terms of my identity as a person, or even us as Ugandans. It has so much value in terms of how you relate with people. Religion has the depth is not as much as you get from culture. And that is also because religion has come from, the religions we're talking about are not from within, they're from without.
Yes.
So you get a lot of depth and you'll be better nurtured if you are rooted in your culture. Even if you embrace Western religion, it is fine. Whether you're a Muslim, a Baha'i, or you're a Catholic, or you're a Protestant, But if you are well grounded in your culture, you'll actually be able to appreciate the principles of other religions better.
Why do you think that the youth have tried to lose their cultures? Why do you think that they're running to that direction, that they're losing their cultures, they're losing everything, they're losing interest in culture, they feel culture has no value, you know? Why is it like that? Haven't you done...
No, I'd actually say they're not running away from culture. They actually don't know it. We, as adults, have not done our homework. We've not carried out our responsibility to teach the young people about their culture in a positive way. So the young people don't have enough examples. If you say culture is good, they'll say, okay, what shows? I have a lot of young people around us, even when we go to our clubs. They want to have an example of a good role model who loves their culture, who's progressive, who can survive in this modern world at the same time be cultural. And we don't have too many examples of that. And if you think of youth, just think 30 years down the line.
Why do you think we don't have examples? And yet culture has been there way back.
One is because the cultural institutions that would have nurtured those kind of role models were abolished in 1966. Yes. And then it took time for them to get back on board to be relevant in society. When you have not been in circulation and you've not been able to assert yourself, you've not been able to grow intellectually and otherwise as an institution for 30 years, and then you come back and you're restored, the institutions are restored, but they also have a lot of restrictions. The ability for them to be able to say, now we can nurture people who are truly cultural, who are grounded in our culture but modern in their outlook, is really limited. Is limited. You can find good examples. Take the Nabagereka, for example, and the Katikiro, or other people in the different cultural institutions who have tried to create that balance. You have a very sort of modern outlook to life, but at the same time, anyone who talks to you can really appreciate that you are culturally rooted and you're proud of it. There are very few examples of people.
Why is it that the youth, so-called .com era people, look at culture as, when you look at you and you're really focused on culture, they feel you're a person who's bewitching, you're a person who's killing, you're a person who's, why do they look at it in that perspective?
It is because of people like you, Jingo. It is because of the media. It is because of the media.
Hey, what has the media done?
The media always looks for something that is sensational. And usually when people talk about culture, what is sensational is negative. There's human sacrifice, there's FGM, there's, all the negative things. So for a young person who's not been brought up in a cultural way, that is a source of information. So they think, oh my goodness, in this day and age, do we have people carrying out FGM without understanding the cultural practice? And if that's their only, because now the source of information for the youth is the media. So if the media don't talk about culture in a positive way, of course the youth will say, this is the gospel truth. Culture is about all these negative practices. So where is the media sharing positive aspects of culture so that there's a balance? So if everything is about, there's a splash here, FGM, there's a splash there, culture, and, human sacrifice and witchcraft, and they've found a shrine somewhere and everybody's upset about it because this person has been doing evil things, okay, that might be true. So is that all that culture has to offer? There's so much more, and we never talk about it.
Yes, you're still watching TV Africa, and this is Breakfast in Africa show. Let's have a little break, and then we can come back.
Dr. Bitona yo, Anuga kuye mutaimu yo, Atko problema, Lucas with production. Taimu yo, Dr. Bitona this one ya, taimu yo, Buli chola bakwe kunzi, chikula ne chimalera ne chigenda. Anti byonna byansi, kayimba tubire kaona chibagamba. Akabina kabigula ebigula mu tayimu y'obuheri yakuleetera. Amafiga gabakube buli bawe butinga teri yakulengera. Kozesa ku tayimu yo kuba manyeri yakuleetera. Anti buli babutinga wabuuka bikadde. Tayimu yo kozesa ku tayimu y'okubamanyiri yakuleetera anti buli babuti nga wafuuka mikadde mama w'abanabo yakulumya ku luusi tafumba sire kwini gye yava namufuula ebikadde laba ziza papa nawo yakikuba ne yeeyita katonda namunyigira namufuula katonda namunyigira namufuula ebikadde laba pikifa mayika yakikuba iswaka nilisuka joni bulaka gye yava namufuula ebikadde tajoza kamiliyoni Dr. Jose yakikuba nga ne wamutayimba laba bitone gye yava kozesa ku tayimu y'okubamanyiri yakuleetera anti buli babuti nga wafuuka mikadde kozesa ku tayimu y'okubamanyiri yakuleetera anti buli babuti nga wafuuka mikadde ekomera lye luzira yakikuba n'abayayini bakunamu nalufenya gye yava namufuula ebikadde yukira straka baby straka yakikuba nga omugwalaba namulindwa gye yava namufuula ebikadde ekingo mu kibanda salongo yakikuba namwesimbamu mijje junior gye yava laba misita besije mukulu besije yakikuba nga terinajjanya laba omuyaye gye yava namufuula ebikadde Bobi Wine gye yava laba omuyaye gye yava namufuula moyo bambi gye yava laba omuyaye gye yava namufuula ebikadde kozesa ku tayimu y'okubamanyiri yakuleetera anti buli babuti nga wafuuka mikadde kozesa ku tayimu y'okubamanyiri yakuleetera anti buli babuti nga wafuuka mikadde buli kyolaba gwe ku nsi kikula ne kimala era ne kigenda anti byonna byansi kayimba tubirekawo nakibagamba akabina kabigula ebigula mu tayimu y'okubeeri yakuleetera amafiga gabakube buli babwe buti nga teri yakulengera Dr. Administrator Article Problem
Yes, welcome. You're welcome to TV Africa. Your host, Jingo Kalule, as usual. We're having our last segment of Breakfast in Africa. Yes, we're here with Drani, Emily.
Yes.
I don't want to call that Emily name. It really affects me a lot. Yes,
Right.
I'm here with an African Drani.
Thank you.
Yes, well dressed in African attire. That one is so. I really thank you for putting on that. As usual, you can see. Yeah, I'm also smart. Yeah. Yes. Well, we're talking about tradition right now. What is tradition?
Tradition is, it can be seen as systems or set of practices that are passed down generations. So it is something that is done over and over again until it is accepted as the norm. You know, so
Set of practices.
yes, so it is repeatedly enacted until a community, or it could be even a family. You have your tradition. Every Christmas we do this. You know, every Easter we must do this. So it is something that you have been carrying out repeatedly because it has meaning for you,
Yes.
and you have value which you find in it, and it ends up becoming normal. It is something that you do normally at a periodically or otherwise.
Yes, and CCFU has tried to fight
Yes.
for people's traditions.
Yes.
All traditions.
All, as long as you're in Uganda, CCFU is the Cross Cultural Foundation of Uganda.
Practices.
Yes.
And you're fighting also FGM.
Well, no, because we've not actually had any program on FGM, to be
Okay,
honest.
yes.
We have not concentrated on FGM, but it's something that always comes up. Every time we're talking about culture, they ask, do you support FGM? And we say no, but we support people's cultures, we support people's traditions. And if they are to change, our approach is the change should be initiated by that community. We should help them to see this is not in keeping with human rights, it's not in keeping with children's or women's rights, and they begin to see they don't live in a capsule. They live in society, in a bigger society than just Pokot. It is Uganda, it is East Africa, it's Africa. It's the world that is concerned about certain
How have
things.
you tried to link tradition with development?
Tradition and development, well, we like to say culture in development.
Yes.
And they are closely linked because as long as you talk about people, you have to talk about culture.
Culture.
And as long as you talk about development, it's about people. It's not about buildings. It's about how we see the world. It's how we use the resources in the world. It's how we use power and how we relate to one another. So if people are defined by their culture, whatever they see as development ideally should be influenced by that worldview.
Do you believe
What
that
is good,
some
what
of
is
the
not?
development is affecting culture?
Yeah, there are lots of things in development that have affected culture. For instance, when we talked about education previously, there are cultural traditions, let's say in terms of occupation, whether it is livelihood in terms of cattle keepers or people who are who are fisher folk who are along the Nile and other places, or people who are agriculturalists. Traditionally, they had their ways of carrying out these different occupations. And because of development, we have borrowed a lot from the West and other places. And most of these bodies of knowledge have not integrated the local culture. So we'll say we are going to introduce agriculture, and we have our agricultural officers, and they're using blueprints from somewhere, but not necessarily from our communities. Or you can have people who are looking at pastoralism. That's an example I'd like to give. So for instance, we have cattle keepers in Uganda, whether it's the Ankole or the Karamojong or any other society. What they have in terms of their tradition, they have a lot of cultural values around, one, the importance of the animal, which is a cow. They have a lot of values in terms of training the young people to care for this resource from which they get milk, they get the hides, they get food, they get money. And also they get a sense of identity. Because a Karamojong without a cow, surely you can't even think about who a Karamojong would be. So they have that important attachment. So in terms of development, you find that this cow is treated like a commodity of trade. So what do we need from the cow? We need milk, maybe we need leather, and we need milk. And if it's commercial, we make sure that we get, all these products go through a process that excludes all the socialization that goes around caring for the cow, the values that are transmitted in terms of, when they are sharing responsibility in the family for looking after the cow, the skills involved, all that is lost. So you're not saying development is bad. We're saying that development should be harmonized with culture, so that development is guided by our culture. It's not seen as development and culture. The two have to come together.
Yes, because Madam Johnny, you're not easy to find and get. That's why I channel to all corners. I drive to all corners. So now I would talk about, because you're CCFU and you're trying to protect culture and tradition.
Yes.
Yes, protecting culture and tradition takes a lot.
Yeah.
Do you really encourage intermarriages?
Well, I think it's very difficult to define what individuals choose to do. We're one of the most, I'm a product of intercultural marriage, so what can I say?
What could you say?
What can I say? Yes, so in Uganda we are so diverse. And I think what we have always promoted as an organization is a value for cultural diversity. Respect others. And you might find something beautiful in another culture. Why wouldn't you want to be associated with them either through marriage or friendship? And we have social cohesion as a country or even as a community. So I'm not against intermarriage. I think there's no problem. I mean, I wouldn't be sitting here if my father didn't marry my mother.
So you
Yes,
encourage intermarriages.
but I think what is important in intermarriage is to make sure that both families see what is valuable and make sure that the children don't lose. Actually, the benefit would be to be able to draw from both cultures, whether it is language, knowledge of food, knowledge of dress,
because
and all those
different
things.
cultures have different traditions.
Yes.
And due to the fact that different cultures have different traditions, and then you encourage intermarriages, then don't you think we're losing it out with
No,
culture?
it's just enriching. Because if you say I'm a Muganda and my father and my mother are Baganda, you
if I'm a
concentrate
Muganda and my father's a Munyankole and my mother is a
yes.
Muganda.
So wouldn't you be
Culture.
enriched? Wouldn't you be enriched by knowing and embracing your Chiganda culture
And
knowing and embracing your Ankole culture? So while in Buganda there might not be cows, you will benefit.
Where in Buganda they kneel, in Munyankole they don't kneel.
Yes.
So how are you going to handle that then?
When you're with the Baganda, you don't kneel, and when you're with the Banyankole, if they need you to kneel, or when you're with the Baganda, you kneel. When you're with the
Then you're
Banyankole,
losing
you
it
don't.
now because
No, you're not, because you're multifaceted. You don't just have one identity. So when if you were to go to let's say you were to go to the church, what religion are you?
I'm an African.
You're an African.
Yes.
So if you were to be invited to your friend's wedding, and they are in a Catholic church, wouldn't you subscribe for that moment? While you're there, you respect their religion and you behave the way the Catholics behave because you're in their space. But that doesn't change you as a person. It doesn't make you
because
less
what
or
I've realized,
more.
people have got confused by intermarriages.
I don't
They
think
have got confused by intermarriages in order to follow their cultures. That they feel, I'll just follow this one because this is more simpler. This is like this. That's when the culture loses its yes.
I think that then the responsibility is with the parents to be able to give time to teach your children about the different cultures which are there. So, for instance, if there's a holiday, you go and visit.
The father is
one
teaching
side.
this, the mother is teaching
Yes,
this.
I mean, you have capacity to absorb. We are human beings, and we have the capacity.
The father is
the
telling
intelligence
you
to-
stand, the other one is saying kneel.
But you're not going to kneel in a community where it is not the norm.
Yes.
You're not going to
You're
be-
still watching TV Africa,
Yes.
and the program has been Breakfast in Africa. Because of time, I want you to just,
Okay.
say something and then we can close the show.
Okay, I'm really grateful to be here on TV Africa. I think it's
Surely.
a really great show, and I really enjoy talking to you, Jingo.
Surely.
For Ugandans, I think what we should do is, one, embrace our diversity, embrace our cultures. Let us not shy away from them. It's true there are very many aspects of culture that might have been overtaken by time and maybe are considered irrelevant. but there's a lot about our heritage that is beautiful. And we can draw a lot of innovation, especially for the youth who love creativity and are very vibrant. There's so much we can draw from our cultures. It might not even be your own. As long as you're Ugandan, you can pick from any culture in Uganda, and it will inspire your arts, it will inspire your creative industry. And even if you're a playwright, it will inspire what you put in there. And whether you're in the area of food or whether you're in the area of dress and fashion, there's a lot you can be inspired by our culture. And so let's embrace our heritage.
Greetings too.
My greetings to, of course,
really?
CCMU, my family out there.
Yeah.
Yes, and the Cross Cultural Foundation of Uganda is a great organization. Do partner with us. And we invite the youth and other partners, cultural institutions. You're the custodians of our heritage. So my greetings to you, and hopefully we are going to be able to work and make sure our heritage is respected in this country.
Yes. You've been with your host, Jingo Kalule, watching TV Africa and Breakfast in Africa show. Yes, other programs are still running. Stay tuned.